Hey guys, time for another progress update on the Philco 15DX. So picking up where we left off last, I'm working on the speakers. And the more I work on these original Philco speakers, the more I like them. The voice coils are moving more freely now. The cones are repairing fairly well. And I think they're going to work all right. So, for example, I used some of this GC service cement to repair this area and glue back the seam that it opened up. Now I just need to make a little patch for that and glue up a tear here, and I think this one will be ready to try out. This one is quite rusty. It looks terrible on the back side, but with just a can of compressed air and a little toothpick and whatever various implements I could use to get in between the voice coil and the speaker frame and kind of just move the cone around while having the speaker face down so debris could fall out, I've been able to free it up pretty well. So this whole thing is moving quite nicely now. And compare that to the Wheeler speaker that I have been using, which will move but not as much. And remember, the spider on this is all kind of like mashed down, like this cone is mushed in and just doesn't want to come back out. I think that's partially due to the spider being a bit damaged and partially due to the surround on this, which is just the same material as the speaker cone, just crimped a bit around the edge. Compare that to the original Philco, and it has similar paper for the cone, but the surround is some type of pliable, like fabric or something. So the whole thing moves much better. Still scrapes occasionally, but I'm hoping that can be worked out. The problem with these is someone reminded me online, Speaker Freak, I believe, there's no dust cover on these. So not only is crud getting in from the backside, from the rusty pole, but junk can fall in on this side and get in on this side of the cone. So, like I said, what I've been doing is putting this so the face is down, manipulating the cone from the back so the debris falls out of the speaker. And this is the one that was really, really bad, because there's a lot of rust all around the voice coil pole down in there. But the toothpick, little metal implements and whatnot, I've been able to kind of scrape away the rust, so that this one is also moving much better now. Still a little bit of scraping, but before this thing was frozen in place. And of course I got to repair the cones. So to reiterate my plan, I'm going to patch these up as best I can, see how they sound. If they work great, I think I'll just go with them as they are. If they work fairly well, but it seems like there's just too much rubbing, we'll see about getting them repaired, or maybe I'll even take a whack myself. Someday I really do want to try to recone a speaker. It seems like it's a skill that I should acquire. Now, as for the main chassis, I did use a little black hot glue and filled in this Bakelite block so we don't see the modern orange capacitor staring out. And I was able to unmount the original audio transformer, and while doing so, I discovered something kind of interesting. If you go back and watch the earlier video segments in the series, you'll see that I found various incarnations of the schematic. And one thing that was different in particular was some showed a resistor on the output transformer, or rather, I guess you'd call it the audio driver transformer, and some don't. So this is the transformer we're looking at right here. It's the one that kind of takes it, makes it into kind of inverts it so it can do the push-pull. So we got a center tap and then 180 degrees out of phase signal to drive the push-pull output tubes. Well, look at this version of it. There's a resistor right there. Number 57, I believe. It's not on here. And I didn't find it in this chassis either. But when I unsoldered the wires going to this, I found remnants of 2 leads on here that have been cut off. So I bet that there used to be a resistor there. And I think if you dig through the various service notes and production changes, one of them mentions removing that resistor. I'm not positive though, but I'm going to review those service notes and see what they have to say about that particular resistor. And if there is no service note about taking it out, maybe I'll put it back in. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Let's see what else. Oh, now that I've got this out, I'll kind of sand it down, clean it up, and then repaint it, just like I did on those 2 guys. And as far as restuffing these goes, I am going to go with those 3 Panasonic 2.2 microfarads and throw them in parallel. They fit nicely inside. I did find a more, I shouldn't say more, I found a version of this cap from a different manufacturer where I could use a single cap that would fit inside the can, but I've already got these. They're here. They'll fit. They'll work fine, so I'm going to go with those. I've been working at these speakers off and on for about a day and a half now, and coming along pretty nicely. I've got majority of the rust gone. This larger speaker was especially bad. Some of it I realistically can't get rid of unless I dismantle the speaker. Like there's actually rust in between the field coil and the steel pole piece around it. And unless I want to break off these, I'm not quite sure what you call them, they're not really rivets, but sort of malleable metal, and this was hammered down and these kind of mushroomed out, something like that. So unless I want to break those off and take this apart, I can't get in there, and I don't want to flood this thing with acid because I don't want to damage that field coil, so I'll just do what I can. And I have pretty much finished repairing the cones on both speakers. I'll put a little more glue and maybe double up on the patch. I just used a plain old coffee filter. It's a little bit thinner than the original paper material, so I put a patch from the back side. And I think I should put a corresponding patch on the front to make it stronger. Otherwise, both coming along nicely. My order for renovated radios has arrived. I picked up some stuff for some other projects in addition to the 15DX, so let me sort those out first. That would be these, and these is for some other Philco radios. These are to mount the tuning capacitor on top of the chassis. These are for a radio that I have never shown you guys, but someday I will. And these are what I'm thinking I can use to place these guys. So first off, this is the one that mounts on the back of the tuning capacitor. I figured if I used this guy plus one of these, that's a pretty good approximation. So go with that. And for these guys, these are the closest I could find, which I think will work out alright. I mean, I know they'll work fine in terms of cushioning it and securing it to the chassis, but if you don't use the right thickness, the controls won't line up with the front of the cabinet. So this one's a little bit thinner, but this one is slightly thicker, so between the two it might balance out. I do know with these old ones, even though they've hardened up, the controls lined up fairly well. If I need to, I can tack one of these on as a little shim to get things up a little bit higher. I ended up spending the better part of a week removing the rust from these speakers, and I'm almost done, at least with the areas I can readily get to. And now I'm putting on some primer in the areas that are done so it doesn't start rusting up again. The last areas I really want to focus on are down around in here between these two pieces of metal. This was the worst. I know this radio was in at least I presume it was in a flooded basement. It seemed like the lower foot or so was underwater, and this was a lower speaker, so it took the brunt of it. And in here, man, this is where I was really spending a lot of time. You see how pitted that metal is. And there's still some rust down in here between the field coil and this, and just can't really get to it. It's just not that practical. Likewise, there's also some rust on the other side of the frame. I've kind of just used a screwdriver and poked under there and carefully scraped it away, but I don't want to put any rust remover down in there and get it on the cone. So, maybe in another day or two I will be able to fire these up. Before that, though, I do have to finish working on the chassis. I did paint up the audio transformer. Came out looking real nice. I need to remount it and wire it back in. I want to do a light polishing over the whole chassis still. I got the rust off of it, though. I'm going to take some Noxon, I think. Some Noxon metal polish and go over it. I'm not trying to get this thing shiny like the aluminum, but just a nice dull, even gray would be fine with me. I'm working on polishing up the IF cans now. I'm using some Simichrome. I got this 250 gram can some years ago, and I still have quite a bit left. You really don't need much, and unless you're going to be working on a lot of polishing projects, I'd recommend getting a smaller tube that comes in a 1 3/4 ounce tube for less than $10. So you really don't need much. So what I've been doing is just applying a little bit to a can, kind of like on the side like so, and then I cut up a piece of 100% cotton cloth into strips and just wrap it around as best I can. You know, I'm working with these to attach to the chassis, so I have to get in there how best I can, and then just going back and forth like this, and then working my way all around the can. And as you can see, these cans are looking pretty darn nice now. And after doing this for a while, I grab a clean cloth and polish up the remaining little residue. And, almost done now. The tops are a little bit grungier. They actually have some bit of pitted corrosion, so I'm going over those a bit more. But even so, I think I'm just about done. So do a little bit more on these cans on the end here, and then I want to start putting this back together. I just reinstalled the main tuning capacitor with the new rubber mounts, and it's working out really well. Feels nice and solid, but just a little bit of give. So there's some new rubber washers in here, and the rest are down below. It's nice and snug. But the final test will be, does this control line up with the hole in the cabinet? I sure hope so. So what's left? Wire that in, put the copper caps in here, and I want to rewire the bulbs in here. There's a dial lamp down here, and there's a bulb for the shadow meter. The other day I was adjusting this bulb to get the shadow meter working as best I could, and these wires actually shorted together from friction. Over the years, this old crumbly insulation has worn away, and there's some bare spots in the wire. I don't want that to ever happen again. That could burn out the power transformer. So I'm going to replace that wiring with this stuff, which is cloth covered wire that's pretty darn close to the original thing. I've got several colors I can use. And hopefully that'll be it for the main chassis. And the speakers are just about ready to go too. I've got the worst of the rust off the frames. The exterior of the frames anyways are still rusty down below, but I want to get these wired back in, and maybe I'll have time tomorrow, if not Sunday for sure, to get this thing all wired back together and fire it up. I really want to hear how these speakers sound, so stay tuned for that in the next segment.